It's time once again to slip into your camo, grab your bow, and join us out in the field for another episode of the Up North Journal, presented by PSE Archery. The Up North Journal crew is knocked and ready to rock for another exciting adventure. So let's step outside and hit the trail.
Welcome back to another episode of the Up North Journal, everybody. I'm host Mike Adams, sitting in the cabin tonight with Dan DeFaw. Before we get started, we want to help you save some money.
That's right, folks. Don't forget to use our promo codes to save that money. And let's start off with buckbaits.com. That's right, the brick and mortar store of Buck Baits down at Sterling Heights, Michigan at 15 and Dodge Park. Go over there. If you're on the website, buckbaits.com, use the promo code UNJ20. That will get you 20% off your order.
For those of you who are looking for Easy Cut products, make sure you go to easycutproducts.com. And when you're there, use the UNJ promo code UNJ15 off to save 15% off your order.
And let's not forget Lincoln Roan over at packermax.com. It's never too early, never too late to think about the Packer Max. Go on over to packermax.com, use the promo code UNJ25. That'll get you $25 off your order over at Packer Max Outdoors.
For those of you looking for some new firearms and firearm products, make sure you go over to the islandarmory.com. While you're there shopping, use the promo code UNJ10 to save 10% off your order there.
If you shot that bird of a lifetime and you want it mounted, don't forget Troublesome Creek Taxidermy. We've had them live on the show. We've talked to them. You want to get 10% off your order, go to Facebook, go to troublesome.creek.7, find their website. If you go to our website, UNJ, make sure to click on the button to download the form. You get 10% off over there using the code UNJ10.
Looking for that game call, whether it be a squirrel, whether it be goose, duck, deer, make sure you go to JPO Game Calls. Look for them at jpogamecalls.com, and while you're there shopping, use the UNJ10 promo code to save 10% off your order.
And Miller Deer Tracking, the man that seems to never sleep during deer season. Get 20% off your next deer tracking using the promo code UNJ20. Look for Miller Deer Tracking on Facebook or give him a call over at 810-240-4891.
Looking for the hottest new plastics to take on the water, whether it be hard water or soft water? Make sure you go over to southernindianabaitco.com. While there, use the UNJ promo code UNJ10 to save 10% off your order.
Deer Camp Coffee, folks. We drink it every night on the show. You want to try it? You can go to the brick and mortar store at 15 in Dodge Park at Deer Camp itself, or go to deercampcoffee.com. Also use our promo code UNJ10. You get 10% off your order. And don't forget, get a bag of the UNJ medium roast blend there as well.
All right, Danny, where's our live view camera look from tonight?
Good evening, everybody. Live in the cabin. That's right. Up North Journal. It's live. It's Wednesday night. And we are taking a semi-live look.
Is that my backyard?
Right? It could be a lot of backyard. It is 70 degrees here in Michigan. But we are looking over Lake Chemung, I do believe is how you pronounce it, in Bridgenorth, Ontario. We're going across the border tonight.
We are.
And there's a purpose of why we're going across the border.
That's right, but that did look kind of like my backyard. I think I could float a kayak or a canoe in the backyard tonight.
I tell you what, besides the backyard, the streets were, man, it has just been Water City. But it's been nice with 70 degrees.
It is nice. You know, it's a little humid, but the weather's changing. I think we're going to start to see leaves on the trees here real soon, and flowers are going to start popping. But I think we just need to go ahead and pop right into the show tonight because we're going across the border.
We're going across the border to Ontario, and you met this gentleman at that
symposium
in
East Lansing. That's right. Yep. We've got Kevin Callan, the Happy Camper from Bridgenorth, Ontario. Correct?
Yes.
All right, I got it right. Okay, Bridgenorth. I keep wanting to say Bridgeport because we got a Bridgeport.
We got a Bridgeport just a couple miles up the road.
So Kevin, welcome to the show, man. I appreciate you coming on tonight.
It's fantastic. Yeah, it was great seeing you at the show. The Lansing Quiet Adventure Symposium, where you have canoes and kayaks, and on the other side you've got a rabbit contest going on.
Yeah. What was next door? A legitimate rabbit show?
It was a rabbit show, yeah. And it smelled like a rabbit show.
Really?
Oh, yeah, it was great. It was great. Huge. I remember one year I was going from the airport in the show van, and beside me in the show van was the rabbit judge from the rabbit show.
Ah,
right?
Okay.
And so, me being a real idiot, I asked him every single question someone should never ask a rabbit judge. right? I said, well, there's a floppy ear. Do you put it down? You know, or you know, do you eat the rabbits after the and he didn't find me funny, but the shuttle driver, young kid, he was just laughing his buns off.
Well, what I would have asked is, why don't you have this show in the hunting expos next door?
Yeah, there you go.
Because we could have live target range.
You could have rabbit hunting right there. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure that would get you done well, right?
Yeah. Did he have a rabbit in his hat or up his sleeve?
I asked those questions. I asked him if he had it in his hat. And again, he actually, in his final answer, he kept quiet for the whole thing. He was a very serious man. He had a tuxedo on. And he goes, I go around the world judging rabbits, and I make millions of dollars. What is your plan in life?
To have fun and stay in the outdoors as long as possible. That's what I like to do.
So, whatever. But yes, welcome to the show. And we got your book here, your 18th book. Actually, this is your 19th, as we discussed. Another Bend in the River. How many bends are there to a river?
Quite a bit. It all depends how bad your life is or how exciting your life is. Depends how you judge the bend.
Okay.
If there's white water, if there's a waterfall ahead, or there's just, you know, nice loon calls and mist, and there's trout around the corner, it all depends.
There you go.
Okay, so as we get into this book and we talk about your life as are you an extreme canoeist, or are you just a canoeist, or what are you?
Well, I'm a fanatic, I would say.
Ooh,
I mean, I've
fanatic.
been canoeing since I was 12. My very first canoe trip, my dad would always take me out fishing at, we'd go camping or we'd go to those fly-in fishing lodges. And when I was 12, I had that t-shirt on saying, "Oh no, it's Mr. Bill." So that just shows you how old I am, right? From Saturday Night Live.
There you go.
That is classic.
Oh yeah, it was classy, right? So we were out on this remote lake doing lake trout fishing, trolling in an aluminum boat, and we weren't doing well. So the lodge owner said, "Well, go to the back lakes, and there's an old canoe." So it was a Grumman canoe, which was probably new at the time, whatever. Now it's a archaic, whatever. So we went in and the back lakes, and we just went nuts on brook trout. And I wrote in my journal, because I'm a writer and I'm a geek, and I said, you know, this vessel is a great vessel to get into brook trout fishing. And that's kind of what got me into canoe tripping. I got fanatic with it because, I had no problem with you getting in with a boat and ATVs, whatever, but the idea of getting in the back lakes with a canoe is that you're going to get a lot more brook trout, and you're going to get less people, and if you actually meet someone out there, they're going to be just like you because they just went through hell just like you did on the Portage, right?
Right. Getting from one place to the other, I kind of equate it by reading your book like the boundary waters in Minnesota here, where you can go from lake to lake to lake, and even here in Michigan, up in the Upper Peninsula, you can do the same thing. There's lakes everywhere, but even if it's on a river and you got a place like you're talking about whitewater, you don't want to go through it. You got what you call portage. So I'm going to ask that question: portage, portage. Danny says portage, and I said no. I said I think he says it's portage.
Well, that's a big debate, right? I will give two answers. One is, if you look at the history of the word, it is a French word. So portage is not French. Portage is French.
Okay.
And so therefore it's correct. And mind you, I know so many American paddlers, and they say portage. And at the end of the day, I don't really care. It still hurts when you do it. So I don't care how you call it.
At the end of the day, if it's a portage or a portage, you're sore when you're done.
Well, it's true. And it's also like what the boundary waters, they measure portages by rods or yards, but they also measure it by canoe lengths.
Okay.
So the old way is a 16-foot canoe. So how many of lengths of those canoes are? That makes more sense to me than actually measuring in any other way, right? I mean, yeah.
It does. I mean, I understand why, but I wouldn't. If you told me it was, 50 canoe lengths or whatever,
Right.
I was like, okay, well, what's the length of the canoe? But I mean, you've explained it now, so I'd have to do the math in my head real quick to kind of get a sense of it. But yeah, it's the language. It may be a little different, but at the end, it's all the same, right?
I would love to write a book on canoe culture because I've traveled around a lot, and they all go out for the same reason. But if you go to Maine, they pull canoes up rapids. If you go to New Brunswick, they pull canoes. if you actually go to Algonquin, in central Ontario, they use prospector canoes with a straight shaft beaver tail paddle. If you go to the Boundary Waters, they use a bench shaft paddle. If you go to actually the Western Canada, or even Western United States, they actually use streamlined canoes, not symmetrical canoes. Mm-hmm. So it's not to say like what is right and what is wrong. It's like as long as you're going. And I got to say, I went to the last fall. I went to the Welsh Canoe Symposium in the UK, mm-hmm. and I go there every few years, and go to Scotland and go to England and go paddling with them. And they are just far more experienced than any American and Canadian paddler, like for skill set, because they practice all the time. They're very, very knowledgeable, very skilled, far more than and I've been paddling for years. But what's really interesting is when I was speaking there this last year, the young guy ahead of me, he was talking about a river he did where he did not see anybody for 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
20 minutes. And then I got up on stage and I'm presenting on this river I did for 5 weeks up in far northern Ontario where I didn't see anybody for 5 weeks.
Right. I was like,
and they can't fathom that. They can't fathom it at all.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a different culture, right? So
yeah. It is kind of unique to different regions, I guess. Or, there's people we know that do exclusively lakes, or they do exclusively rivers, or they only kayak in northern Michigan. They don't kayak in southern Michigan, and then you get into those discussions about, you'd mentioned about different types of canoes. Well, we're into the kayaking, so it's a different type of kayak, whether it's the beam width or the length or what type of paddle. But we're all going to the same place.
Well, even like anglers are doing a lot of sit-on kayaks, which makes a lot of sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Casting as opposed to the other kayaks. Or even a lot of canoeists don't fish. I mean, I fish. I mean, my dad would actually come down from heaven and haunt me for the rest of my life if I went across a northern lake and didn't fish it in a canoe.
Yeah.
Where other people would do that, and they wouldn't even bring a fishing rod, which to me would be a sin.
Right.
It's just different worlds, right?
Right, exactly. And not only did your favorite recipe I find in the book is trout. So you like trout, but I see you were a good little Catholic boy, but you had 3 sisters. How did that work out with you being the youngest? Do any of them canoe with you?
It was hell. It was hell. Imagine, okay, so really the funny part is I'm the last male Callan, right? And so my dad was really excited when I was born, but my 3 older sisters, they basically called me the prince, right? And, I didn't really get away with anything. We were really strict upbringing, and I love my sisters, but it was so funny. You have to realize that I'm very hyper, and you guys met me at the Lansing show. I was really hyper. I am the quiet one of the family. My 3 sisters are 10 times more hyper than I am.
So gatherings are really loud.
Oh, can you imagine at Christmas? It's insane, absolutely insane, right? So, and it was funny writing a memoir because when I wrote it, they're like, "Oh, are we in it?" Yes, it's a memoir.
Oh, you're in it.
You're part of the family.
Oh yeah, and I have to characterize the one sister I'm more close to. She's only 2 years older than I, so we grew up more together than the others. But I had to characterize when I was in high school, in the school play, she was the class act of the Wicked Witch of Wizard of Oz. I was one of the monkeys. That characterizes my life right there.
Wow.
It sets the tone.
That's a nice family dynamic.
Oh, man. And now we know why Dad wanted to go fishing, because he needed some quiet time, right?
He really did take me away to do all that. I even would say that my dad was a professional boxer, and if you look at me physically, that didn't happen with me. You were right? But I think one of the nicest stories of my life was that I was a really shy kid. I had very bad speech impediment. I stuttered, didn't like people, was really nervous around people. And my dad knew that, so he thought, well, we better get you into something. So he put me into Scouts, and I love Scouts. I've helped Scouts all my life. I've volunteered for them to do that. But I just didn't like going there because I didn't like people. And you would love this story, guys, especially if you're a trout angler. So my dad would, at 12 years old, he would drop me off at the church to go to Scouts to get used to people. And he would drive off. I never went. I went and got my bamboo fishing rod and a can of worms I stocked behind the church, and I went trout fishing onto some trout stream just down the valley from the church. And when he came to pick me up, he thought I was at the scout meeting. So the story of it, really quick version, is then all of a sudden one day he came home from church, from work. He worked at a factory, and he goes, Kevin, the big scout thing is this weekend, the scout camp. Like, oh yeah, Dad, I forgot. I didn't forget. I didn't know anything about it. Right. So I was starting to pack, and halfway through, I finally had to tell him, like, Dad, I never went. And I thought he was going to be really mad. And he just looked at me. I just loved that moment. He goes, well, I guess you better just do more fishing then.
There you go.
What's really kind of cool about that whole thing, guys, you imagine this shy little kid, and then all of a sudden I started presenting and writing books. 5 years ago, and this is, I can't make this crap up, this story. 5 years ago, I was on a huge speaking tour because I had a big book out at the time, and I was really busy, and one of the places I was going to was some scout camp, some leadership thing, and I didn't know much about it. I was just driving there, and I was going there, and there was over 1,000 people there, 1,000 scout leaders in a field, and they had bagpipe people bagging in, and I was the lead speaker of the motivational speech. And it was the camp I was supposed to be at when I was 12.
There you go. The guy that skipped going to Scout.
They finally got him there.
Was the lead keynote speaker.
Right?
Yeah, and to calm down after that, I went trout fishing.
There you go. And, we do have a question coming in over the chat. Are your sisters married, and are they quiet men they're married to?
Oh, that's a good question. They're all married. No, that's not true. Michelle, that's 2 years older than me, she was married, and no longer. The bugger actually messed around with the marriage counselor. Anyway, that's another story. Yeah, he was an ass. But, right. But no, they're not hyper. The other 2 gentlemen, they're not hyper. They're tolerant.
Oh, there you go. So so there you go, folks. It must be, holidays must be an interesting time when they all get together, and the Callans all have a good time, especially from what I hear if the whiskey gets out, right? But we need to come up on our first break. But while we go to the first break, where can people get this book, Another Bend in the River?
Yeah, so it's everywhere. It's a bestseller now, so Amazon, obviously, but it's also on any local bookstore can order it, and you guys have, Barnes & Nobles, it's there as well.
Right.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Just order it, or you can even contact me if you want me to put my initial on it, and I'll send it to you.
There you go. So let's step out. We'll take our first break of the night.
All right, we'll be right back after this.
PSE Archery has reinvented the way you buy bows.
From now on, you can make the most educated decision possible
by basing your bow choice specifically on your shooting needs and goals.
All you need to do is ask yourself, what kind of shooter am I? What do I want to achieve?
PSE will help find the right category for you.
So, what kind of shooter are you?
Find out at psearchery.com.
Welcome back. Second segment of the show. Sitting here talking with Kevin Callan, the Happy Camper from Ontario. Kevin, you're our first guest from Canada.
8?
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I'm very honored. 8?
And we're honored to have you on. So, Dan, go ahead. You had something you wanted to dive into.
Obviously, my fiance, your girlfriend, are watching the show tonight. My fiance says that he would get along with Ron, her brother.
Okay.
He's got 5 sisters, 5 daughters, and 2 granddaughters.
Wow.
Right? Yeah.
He's the lone wolf, huh?
Yep. And then Nancy says, Mike, that's us. She's the hyper, and you're the tolerant one.
I'm going to be tolerant right now.
Right? So, you talked about in the last break, not going to Scouts, learning to love trout fishing. But, dude, you played in a band, a punk band.
Yeah, well, I played in anything that would let me play. That band was called Santa's Syphilis. Yeah, sorry about that, but it's a true story. And what happened was we were asked, it was actually 2 female lead singers, dressed in full leather and belts around their the breasts and punked hair, and we were well known in school, and then so the principal asked us to be at the Christmas assembly because of that. She did not know that we were called Santa Slippers, so before we went on, we had to change our name to Brand Muffins, I think it was.
Okay.
And and the two lead singers, they used to chain me up to the drum set like the Muppet guy.
Animal,
Like
yeah.
the drummer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Oh, man.
What haven't you done?
I did a lot of weird stuff because I'm very hyper. I can't sit still, and everybody goes, well, how'd you have that many jobs? Two reasons. One is I couldn't sit still, and others is I needed everything possible to get me outdoors. Every single job and every single thing I volunteered for and every single thing I did in my life, I needed to get outdoors, whether it was writing, whether it was doing film, whether it was on TV, all these things. And it was like squirrel, and I couldn't sit still and couldn't be indoors because of high anxiety. I was the iceberg. I think a lot of people out there would relate to this as a kid, because back in the day, nobody really talked about high anxiety. I mean, that you were who you were, right? And whether you were bullied or not, whatever, or you were in a punk band, whatever. But I was the iceberg, so nobody really knew what was going on because I was, a nice guy, but underneath, I was just falling apart, like high anxiety, like. To the point that back in those days, I mean, now we do medicine and we see counselors for it, but there was at one point where I was a preteen, and they said, if you go in the bush, you have so high anxiety that your heart muscles are having problems right now, so you basically have these mini heart attacks.
Wow.
And they're not really heart attacks, but they're muscle spasms.
Right.
It's called the Irish grip at the time. It was the Irish grip. And they would put this electrode on my belt to warn me that my anxiety was going up, and I was not allowed to go in the woods by myself. I tore that thing off. I never wore it. Because the moment I went in the woods, I had no anxiety.
Right.
I was very calm, because you are who you are out there. There's no facade out there. You don't have to pretend you're someone else out there. You are who you are out there. And I learned that long ago, and I just wanted to be out in the woods more and more and more.
Well, talk about that a little bit. I mean, and that's one of the things that really intrigued me about the book and about talking with you at the show and listening to your talk at the show, your presentation. But how the outdoors, if we get people, and it doesn't matter who you are or what you're dealing with, but when you get in the outdoors, there's just something about nature. It's so calming. When we get on the water, Nancy and I go, first thing I do when I get on the water, I grab we push off, and I get in the middle of the river, and I grab my paddle, and I stick it up in the air, and I just lean back and look up, and I'm recharging, what I call recharging my solar panel, my internal one, and there's something about the outdoors that it makes you whole again. And it's hard to put into words, but explain how that affected you.
I think the most simplistic way to put it is every culture on this planet, whoever we are and whatever culture we're from, we're born from wilderness. Unless there were aliens put here many years ago, but let's just say that didn't happen. Let's say we're all born from wilderness. And what happens is when you're brought back to the womb of where you were born, you calm down because you are, again, who you are. Where in everyday life, you go to work, and it sucks. You got to deal with everything. You got to deal with the herd. You got to deal with the predation. You got to deal with people that are overpowering you. Nature doesn't overpower you. I mean, it's dangerous at times, and it'll wake you up and make you realize that you're not really all that important out there.
Right.
I think that's good to be out there. But if I had to look at my first aid kit and all the misadventures I've had, and I'm talking like years and years and days and days and being out there, it was never nature that I was afraid of. It was all the things that happened in a bad way. It was human beings that actually caused problems. I mean, there was a trip where I went on where someone was sick. We went to get the plane to fly us out. The guy that was flying us out was arrested for child pornography, so he couldn't get us out. Then finally someone else got us out, and then someone punctured our tires on the back road, and so we were delayed 2 days. And everybody goes, well, why'd you even go on that trip? I went, it had nothing to do with nature, guys. It had nothing to do with actually a bear or bad weather or mosquitoes. And the other time was I was going to give a presentation at a show about my wilderness trips, and there was an accident on the highway, and I administered first aid, and the guy died. It was not a good time. Went to the presentation, and someone in the audience said, isn't this wilderness travel dangerous? And I said, absolutely not. The highway is dangerous.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, you know, and that's the thing, you know, like you said, when you do a day job and you have all that, you do need something to get away and do your recharging. And like you said, at an early age for you with that high anxiety level that you're seeing, as soon as you figured out as soon as you stepped into the woods and you felt that calm, man, that just, you gravitated that probably so much, so often. You were probably less at home than you less and less at home and find you in the woods, right?
Yeah, it's also like, you think about skill set too. If you've learned throughout your life to light a good fire, to get a tarp set up, to actually catch a brook trout, because why do I like brook trout? Because they're not easy to catch. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, I like bass fishing, but yeah, really, like everybody can catch bass. Okay.
Right.
So you catch a brook trout, and far in the wilderness too, especially. So you feel proud of yourself. You don't conquer nature. That's nothing to do with that. You actually not conquer, but you're proud of your abilities, and you progress on your abilities, and it makes you feel good about yourself. And making yourself feel good about yourself really does help with high anxiety, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's goal driven. It is goal driven. You know, you want to eat, you want to stay warm, you want a good place to sleep while you're out there, and those are daily goals to get you to whatever that time frame is or that end. And if you fail at making a fire, well, you're going to have to eat sushi if you catch fish. And if you don't catch fish, then at least you can warm yourself by the fire if you made a fire. But I understand it. It's kind of all goal driven. But then something you said before the show that interested me was, you know, I don't go in you said this, I don't go into the outdoors to survive. I go out to thrive. And you talked a lot about that in East Lansing when you gave your speech.
Yeah, because I'm a happy camper. So I think it's cool to do bushcrafting. In fact, I think bushcrafting is really great. I mean, you know, there's something I call fake bushcrafting. It's like you sort of like, you know, tear the woods apart and say you're bushcrafting. Not bushcrafting. So the bush skills, I think, is really kind of cool. And I did that growing up, and I still do. I take students out, and they do a flint fire. In fact, they did that today in a pouring down rain. And boy, Lord, to make them feel so good about themselves when they did that. That was incredible. Kevin, I can't do this. You do this. I went, no, I'm not going to do this. I've done it 10,000 times. I'm going to sit here and watch you do this. And it's called bush time. Mm-hmm. It's more and more time, more and more skill. Okay, so we're going to sit here all day until you get that fire going. So to be a happy camper is like to thrive out there. Is I don't go out there to say, I survived 3 days and ate gruel. No, I went for 10 days, had really good meals, had a good scotch, had a lot of fun with my friends, caught good fish, and at the end of the day, we didn't want to go home for a while. We weren't rushing back to our cars to get home, right? So that's why I can go on long trips. So everybody goes, well, how can you go for a 20-day trip? Well, because if you do a 3-day trip, you think you're going to die the first night. And I would too. My first night, I'm thinking, why am I out here? I have no friends. The bear's going to kill me. By day 5, you haven't died yet. So you're not really worried about the bear anymore because it hasn't killed you. And by day 10, you really don't know it's day 10 because you don't really care if it's day 10.
And by day 20, you don't want to go back.
Well, yeah, and because it's become your routine lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Whereas back at home, you have a routine lifestyle. You get a coffee in the morning, you go on the highway, you go to work, you come home, have a beer, whatever. But out there, you wake up in the morning, have a coffee, go across the lake, go across the Portage, set up camp, put the tent up, get the fire going. So it's become a routine, and you're very comfortable, and you're, again, thriving, right? You're not surviving. And when my daughter, I've taken her out for years, right? And when she was like 2 years old, we'd be on a 10-day trip, and she'd be giggling in the tent at night. She's not afraid. That's her lifestyle.
Right.
She doesn't. Yeah, you taught her that, you know, there's no fear there because you showed her the correct way and built that into her. So, you know, that's just passing it on down.
I tell you what, let's go ahead. We'll take our second break. We come back. I've got a question I want to lead into about these longer trips, and we'll take off from there. So we're going to step outside, take our next break. We'll be right back after this.
PSE Archery has always dominated the speed category. Now, the most revolutionary cam system ever to hit the market has perfected the shooting experience. Introducing PSE's Evolve Cam System, featuring extremely high let-off capabilities and the smoothest draw cycle in history. No other cam system has ever delivered this level of total comfort and total control. Experience PSE. Experience performance.
Welcome back. Third segment of the show. And before we went to break, you got something real quick?
We're talking to Kevin Callan, and I just want to mention that if anybody wants to order the book, Another Bend in the River, by the Happy Camper's memoir, you can go over to Amazon, the book's there, or you can go to the Happy Camper or KevinCallan.com, and you can scroll there. He's got a website. You can check it out, his road show, and he's got another book there, Once Around Algonquin, now available there. And if you like reading his book but you want to see more of a video, he's got the Casey Happy Camper channel over there on YouTube, so you can go check out some videos that he has over there. And actually, there is a video that he did from the Quiet Adventure Symposium.
Okay, I did not know that.
There you go.
All right, so, well, Kevin, so we've been talking about, how the outdoors recharges us, how, you take these longer trips. One thing that really struck me that you said, and I can't remember if it was at the symposium or in the book, I think it was in the book, you talk about how important your campsite is, picking the right site. Can you go into that a little bit and why it's like, oh, there's a beach over there, well, let's just go over there and set up a tent. Talk about why you put so much thought into picking the right site on the water.
Yeah, Sigurd also said it best with the exclamation marks of our trip. Is you'll forget the portage. I mean, at the time you won't. You're like, I hate this one. And you'll forget the lake you cross. You might not forget the river you're on because that's more of a journey, whatever. But you will never, ever forget the perfect campsite you had on that lake. And it's something you always want to go back to because it's your home. It becomes your home. You set up your tent, your campfire. It's become your place, right? It's almost like the first time you bought a house or rented an apartment.
Right.
It becomes your own, right? Or first time you bought a car, right? I got my green Montego, which, by the way, my friend borrowed and actually messed around with a girl in the back seat in my car before I never did that.
That's not a friend, man. Come on.
That's not. He's not a friend. You know what? I befriended him after that.
Oh, that's good stuff. But yeah, the sights, this, like you talk about seeing the stars or seeing a sunrise or watching a sunset, and those are the things I take pictures of, and they stick in my memory. They're vivid. So I get what you're saying about that.
Yeah, it's great memories coming home too. But at the same time too, I always laugh at this. I go, you can look at a beautiful sunset. You can actually listen to the loons. But if a bear chased your buddy, that's the story you're coming home with, man.
Yeah, right.
It's that sense of adventure. Like maybe we live a mundane life at home, or maybe we don't, but we think we do. But when a bear chases my buddy, I'm going to tell that story 10,000 times over. Like,
right?
Even if he died.
There you go. All I have to do is run faster than him.
That's right. You talked about picking out the perfect site. Is taking an axe with you like taking a banana on a boat?
The axe debate is a huge debate.
It is. You got a whole page on it here. That's where
I know. So bear with me on this, and don't get upset with me. I'm going to talk by my experiences. In winter, I would never go without an axe. You need an axe to split the wood to get more wood, right? In the summer, you don't need an axe, especially a hatchet. You can take one as long as you're skilled with it. That's fine. But I've guided a lot of youth too. And the day where the 14-year-old boy was squatting down with a hatchet, splitting wood, and yes, I did show him how to do it, and that's not how you do it. Hatchet to the groin, completely open, had to get a helicopter to take him out. So after that, I said, I am not taking a hatchet with these youth. And then my boss would say, well, teach them proper. I did. He's 14. He messed up. Because if he cut himself with a bush saw, I can mend that with my first aid kit. A hatchet, I cannot do that. It's an airlift out.
Oof.
Wow.
So
with that said, everybody else is right. If they said, well, he has to be skilled, I agree. After that incident, I said, nah, maybe not.
So would that be probably one of the most misused tools in the outdoors as far as people getting hurt with?
A hatchet especially, because if you mess up, that's a nasty cut, right?
If it's a good hatchet, yeah.
Yeah. And I use an axe all the time, whatever, but do you really need an axe in midsummer on a canoe trip? No, you don't. And if you're bringing a bunch of Yahoo boys, yes, you should teach them how to use it, and that's the way we always did. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting older, wiser, or paranoid. Maybe paranoid.
The older you get and the more trips you take, do you find yourself wanting to be alone on these trips by yourself, or with maybe just one or two people, and then taking longer trips as time goes on?
I've always been that. I've always liked solo trips, to be quite honest. They're easier to plan. You can do whatever you want. You can eat whatever you want. You can get up whenever you want. Do I get lonely? No. Some people would. I always say that group dynamics is really important on a trip, to get along with everybody, especially when you're going solo. I mean, if you don't like yourself, then don't go on a solo trip. But also, I do get finicky of who I go with, and it's always been that case, not because of me getting older, it's because of my jobs. So I spend a lot of time taking youth out. I guided for many years. So when I go with my buddies, they're my buddies. I don't want any strangers. They're because it's a holiday, and if I didn't go with them, it would not be a holiday.
There you go.
So I think that's just a personal thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. I know I get to about, if I go up north hunting, and then typically during bow season, I'll take 2 weekends in between week off, so I'm 9 days. At about day 5, 6, I'm starting to go a little bit stir crazy because I'm by myself, and that human interaction. And speaking of that, that leads me into my next question, thinking about the show alone. And in your book, you talk about that you've had the opportunity, they've asked twice to come onto the show as one of the contestants. If people out there don't know what alone is, go look it up, because I'll tell you what, it's really cool. But can you talk about a little bit about that? And I mean, we did before the show, and I understand now why, but talk about why you didn't take that opportunity to go out into the wilderness to push yourself to an extreme for how many days,
Yeah, so it happened a couple times. So the very first season, so nobody knew about the show at all. And I've done a few TV things in my life, whatever, so that's probably how they contacted me. But imagine this, not knowing anything about it. But at the time, nobody knew this, but my wife wanted a separation at the time, and things weren't good, and I did not want that to happen. And my daughter was quite young, and I'm very connected to my daughter. And also I got this call. It was actually a phone call from them, and saying, we want you to apply. Mm-hmm. And I said, what is the show? So then I went to an Asian person I knew. The agent did a lot of film in Toronto, and Kip Spidell, a really famous film producer, and he goes, Kevin, this is a big deal. Like, this, it's from the History Channel. Like, this is it. Mm-hmm. If you want to make any type of livelihood, because in the outdoor world, you don't make a lot of money, right?
Right.
And he goes, you should do this. I went, okay. And he goes, could you do this? I went, right now? Yes, I could, because actually right now, the way my life is going, they'd have to come and get me. When the show's over, they'd have to come and get me. Like, I would have no problem staying out there.
Right.
But then my daughter found out about it, and again, really young, and she goes, Dad, please don't leave right now. And I said, no problem. But then I answered the show the second time when they asked me again. Of course, at that time, my daughter was older, and she wasn't around as much, and I'm thinking, well, I could do this. Mm-hmm. But then I thought, throughout my life, again, I'm the happy camper. I don't match the show.
Right.
So I did jokingly say to them, I'll be on your show if my items I could bring would be a camp chair, good food, good scotch, a good sleeping bag. And they're laughing, well, that's not what the show's all about. And I went, well, maybe it should be, because I'm not going to be a part of that. I love the show, just so you know. I love the show. I watch the show all the time, and I know a lot of the people that won it, and a lot of them are friends of mine, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm not knocking it. It's just not me. It never has been.
Well, that's the whole point, right? The show, those are specific types of people, and it's not everybody that can do that. It's like, like you just said, you're the happy camper. Bring me my camp chair, mm-hmm. A good scotch. I'll do that alone, right?
It was comical, and they laughed at it as well. I mean, they're kind of taken back at it first, but they laughed at it as well. I said, okay, and I go, because my entire life I've created this persona by accident as being the happy camper. Why would I go back and actually be completely opposite?
Right. Yeah, be totally out of character.
Right. So you got to tell me a little bit about this. We have a sponsor of ours, Deer Camp Coffee, but you explain in the book how to make real camp coffee.
Yeah, that's really important to know. Okay.
Absolutely. It starts my day.
I want to be informed, so inform me, sir.
So you can bring instant, you can do percolated, whatever, but I wouldn't say it's the best coffee, but it's the most impressive coffee to make. And I learned this by guiding. Actually, in fact, a really famous Canadian paddler, Hap Wilson, taught me this years ago when he guided. And then when I guided after him in Toboggan. So what you do is you boil water on the fire, and then you take the boiled water off the fire, and you put coffee grounds in there. You never put it back on to boil, because tannic acids of coffee are released 3 degrees above boiling point, and the oils, flavorful oils of coffee are released 3 degrees below boiling point. So if you let the coffee grounds sit, it releases a nice flavor. So if you put it back, it tastes like shoe leather, right? Mm-hmm. So, but the only problem with that is it's really good coffee, but all these floating grounds are floating around, right? So the best way to settle those grounds just is bang your knife on the side of the pot 3 times or 4 times, and they'll settle. But that's really boring, and you're guiding, and people are paying you money to look impressive. So I would swirl the pot over my head like this and use centrifugal force to push the grounds to the bottom of the pot and tell everybody this. So this boiling water was swirled around my head. And then when they weren't looking, I would bang it 3 times on the side of the pot, right? And they're like, oh, this is great. Now, what was happening, too, at that time is there's always someone on the trip you don't like, but you don't really want to say, especially when you're guiding. So you give them the first cup of coffee, and they think, oh, I didn't think you liked me, but I guess you are because you give me the first cup. Well, that's where all the grounds are floating. So that person's getting all the bad grounds, but they think you're doing this because you like it. And then you would give them the last cup of coffee. Oh, that's great. No, thank you very much, Kevin. Well, it's because all the grounds are floating around there as well. So not only are you really impressing everybody with your skills that really don't exist, it's all facade, you're actually getting back to the person you don't really like on the trip.
Well, you also, the way you describe it in the book, it's also a workout, because you're actually doing that. You could be doing that with the pot up and down while doing squats.
Oh, the squat thing, yes. That's a UK thing. They do that in Wales, and I always thought they were getting me on by doing this. They were squatting down and up and down. So they do the same thing instead of swirl around. They squat, right? And that just looks silly, but it works. It works.
So there you go. That's how you make a real camp coffee.
And I'll never take the first cup from you, or the last.
Probably might be a good idea.
Yeah. So, thanks for the warning, Kevin, because now I know.
There you go.
Right? And so, you get out there. Like you said, you've done kayak or canoeing all over. And what was the worst weather you've ever encountered? Was it in the cold? Was it in the summer? Was it thunderstorms? Was it a tornado, typhoon, whatever? What was the worst storm that you encountered while in your canoe?
Yeah, so right now I would say, in fact, someone asked me this today when I was at the grocery store. They said, what's the most dangerous thing out there? And it is bad weather, because it changes so dramatically now. I mean, look at today. Boom! Like, it's just major, right? And so I remember being in Wabakimi. We were with a film crew, actually, and we were filming Wendell Beckwith's cabin. He was a hermit that lived up there, American, actually. And he believed Pi 3.14 existed up there, and he built these cabins, and he was like, woo! And then he died. But we were out there filming, and so they were filming me out in the lake, and all of a sudden the wind turned, and the sky turned green opposite to the wind. And that means hurricane winds, those twister clouds are coming in, right? And they're all hailing me to the shore because they're like, something's going to happen. So I go to the shore, and we go to make a bush camp to get out of it. And right then, we all had sandals on for some reason, and these red ants were biting our feet, and we're like, ow, 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 ow. So we moved to the next point, and then we made camp there. And then the storm hit, and was one of those, those winds that just take everything down in a swath.
Straight line winds.
Yeah, so where we were originally was completely devastated. There was nothing left. The trees were completely toppled, everything. Where we had moved, we were fine. So if those red ants didn't bite our feet, we'd be dead.
The ant saved his life. Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
They might have knew something was up, too.
Right.
But, so, yeah, I see that you've done canoeing being in the winter, but you should be dressed properly.
Yeah, winter camping, just don't don't go camping for your very first time in the winter, but I love winter camping. I love using a freight toboggan with a hot tent, getting a wood stove going. It's your mini cabin you're hauling behind you. Winter was always the best time to move up north. When I traveled with the Cree and the Ojibwe, winter time was when you moved in the bush and you trapped and hunted. Whereas in the summertime, the bugs were too bad, right? Mm-hmm. So they taught me a lot about that. Taught me a lot about being calm out there. Don't be in a hurry. Again, the happy camper. They taught me all about that. It's like, why are you in a rush out here? So, I just love winter. And I think that's a true Canadian thing. If you live in Canada and you hate winter, why are you even here? Like, we have 4 seasons, and you're lucky to have 4 seasons and not just one.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what it is here in Michigan. You wait 5 minutes and it changes. I mean, truthfully, everybody says, "Oh, the winters that that are so hard." I'm like, you got 3 months of it. Enjoy it while it's here, and then we get out and we do a little snowshoeing and do some hiking, and we've even kayaked in the snow, on the rivers here before they freeze up. So we try to make the most of what time we do have and play in it. I mean, you only go around once, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Embrace it instead of trying to run away from it.
Yeah,
exactly. You call yourself the happy camper. I kind of get that talking with you, and you're kind of pretty happy. I noticed your dad was known as the Fighting Shamrock as a boxer. And so the happy camper, did you come up with that, or did somebody look at you and go, you are the happy camper?
No, that's a great story. First of all, my dad was, kind of cool question about my dad is like he was a professional boxer and everybody in town knew him. I mean, after that, his boxing, he worked in a factory all his life, whatever. And we're quite proud of him doing that, raising a family and stuff. But everybody knew him, and of course I was that shy kid. But then now I become like, everybody knows me in town, right? So what happened though was I wrote a bunch of guidebooks, but it was this one book called Happy Camper. It was all to do with how to. It wasn't to go about where to go. And it became a massive bestseller in 1 month. Like a bestseller in Canada is 5,000 books in 1 year. It sold 10,000 in the first 2 weeks it came out. Wow. So the media loved me. I was on media all the time. And if you do a backlog of Google and on YouTube, me being media. But I'll do this short story, but it's a classic story. And I can't make this story up. It was so classic. So I was on my very first morning show, right? And everybody, all my colleagues were all happy with me, and they're like, "Oh, Kevin, you've made it! You're on the biggest show in Canada this morning." Yeah, and we're going to talk about the book. Well, books are boring, so I had all these gadgets in front of me, camp gadgets, and one was a Whiz Easy. It's a device where women insert so they can pee standing up, and I had that on the table. And the male host comes up, and the female host loves camping, but the male host said, "I don't like camping. Let's just get this over with." I went, "Well, you're a bit of an ass." And we're live across Canada. And so he picks up the first device, which is the Whiz Easy. And he goes, "Kevin, what's this?" I go, "It's a whistle. Give it a try." So he puts this device in his mouth and starts blowing on it. And, of course, the female host tells him what it is. And he spits it out. He's furious with me. Just furious. And the show's over, and I come home, and my colleagues are like, "Kevin, what were you doing this morning? Like, that is so wrong. Like, your whole career is done. You had your chance. It's all done." Well, he didn't like camping. He deserved what he got. That's all I'm saying. And the next morning, I got all these phone calls, and I did endless shows the next day because they're like, "Kevin, you're really funny. Can we have you on?" And I was making lots of money and selling a lot more books because of that guy.
Right?
Thanks to him not liking camping.
Because you are the happy camper.
And he wanted to try the whistle.
If you look at all those morning shows and all the CBC radio stuff I've done, that's what my name is called, the Happy Camper. That's where it started because of that book.
That's great. That is awesome.
Well, that's what it is. And I found that picture of his dad and the Fighting Shamrock, and I'm like, all right, so... And by the way, the younger picture, he does look like you and vice versa. So,
right.
Is your family originally from Canada?
Yeah, it's funny you would talk about that too. So my dad was Irish, my mom's Scottish, and my dad's passed away. My mom's still around, and so my dad was always saying, "You're Irish," because I was the last Irish male Callan, right? Didn't know much about my Scottish background because that was my mom's. About probably 10, 12 years ago, I went to Scotland for the first time with my daughter. Well, actually more than that. She was only 5. Anyway, went there and met my Scottish cousins, and they looked like me. They had the same birthmarks as me, and they're all writers. I didn't know this. You know the story of Bobby, where the dog wouldn't leave the grave in Scotland?
Right.
Well, my great-grandfather made the statue and the poem of that.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know that until I went to Scotland. And then the woman that picked me up, she's my cousin, and she's the chief editor of the Edinburgh Times. My grandfather was a writer, and I didn't know that until I went to Scotland because, again, it was the Irish thing that was more important. And then I've gone to Scotland, I got to say, more than Ireland because I've got to know all my cousins there. But it was kind of cool to see that the apple doesn't fall too far from the trees. Right?
Wow.
So,
yeah. I mean, just to be a writer and then to find out that the rest of the family are writers too. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's
and
cool.
I'm not a boxer. Like, I mean, I love my dad and I'm proud of what he was, but you look at me like that didn't.
Right? So I tell you what, we're coming up on our last break. When we come back, we get to turn the tables on you and ask you some questions that we want to ask all our newbie interviewers.
All right. So we're going to step outside, take our last break, and we'll be right back after this.
Acceleration is part of PSE's DNA. PSE pioneered the speed movement. Now they've developed the vapor category to help you find the most powerful bows on the market to fit you.
High speed equates to intense power and building the momentum you need to be successful. Are you a vapor shooter? Find out at psearchery.com.
Welcome back. Last segment of the show. Man, the show's flying by.
It is flying by, and if you're flying by and you're wondering why we're talking to the Happy Campers, one reason is Another Bend in the River by the Happy Campers, his memoirs by Kevin Callan. So you got to get this book, folks. Get it. He's got 19 other books that you can read about. You can go to his website at kevincallan.com. You can order it over there or go to Amazon as well. He's also got a video side on YouTube, the Happy Camper, KC Happy Camper. So go over there, check that out, get some videos over there. Like we talked about, there's actually a video from when Mike met him over at the Quiet Adventure Symposium.
All right. So last segment. We want to save the questions here. We looked at the one thing we didn't ask you is, for the simplest in terms of somebody, we talked, Mike, we've talked before about buying a kayak, but when you buy a canoe, what are some of the things you should be thinking about before you run out and buy one? What's the kind of the checklist?
Yeah, it's not that easy because there's so many different designs and stuff. I think the one thing that everybody should know that a lot of people don't know is, like, I prefer the Prospector model. And the reason why I like a Prospector is that Prospectors used it because it's not fantastic for anything, but it's good with everything. So you can actually solo paddle it by sitting in the bow canoe and pointing it the other way because it's symmetrical. Whereas asymmetrical boats are faster in the water, but you can't do them solo. So you need two boats, solo and the other. And the other is that it's got good payload. It's good in big water and that sort of thing. It's okay in rapids. But here's what really you should know about. There's a whole bunch of companies out there that sell a Prospector. Well, they all came from the original Prospector, but they cannot have the original Prospector because when a company actually makes their own Prospector, they have to change it to make it their own. So when someone says, well, this is a Prospector canoe, well, look into what the design is. And I won't go into certain companies, but I do know some companies have a poor Prospector with a low payload, low to the water, and others are far better. And yet the companies will say, no, this is a Prospector. Well, no, it's not the original chestnut design, that sort of thing. Also, what can you afford? Should you maybe rent for a few years? Because they're really expensive. The other thing about people that will tell you, well, it has to have 3 keels, or at least 1 keel. That's old time. Like, the keels were always put in a canoe to keep things straight, right? Especially a 3-keel canoe, which my first canoe had 3 keels. But now, if they're streamlined and pointy, that is the keel. You don't need a keel in the boat anymore. And yes, traditional people will argue with me about that, but That's fantastic. Go in your 3-keeled or your keeled canoe. I have 2 of them in my backyard. I have 12 boats, right? I collect them all. I'm a fanatic. But in the new boats now, you really don't need a keel if it's designed to be streamlined. The other is what's called tumble home. Tumble home is when the boat is kind of shaped like this, and it's really important to know what's initial stability and second stability. So if you go out in a boat and you feel really comfortable and stable in the boat when you first go out, it's not a good canoe. It might feel like a good canoe, but if you get in really bad water, that water is going to come in. But if you're in a boat that has second stability, you're like, oh, feels really tippy. It's really tippy. That's because it has good tumble home and also has a homemade keel into the boat. So when you start going, you're very stable. So it's called second stability, and then you'll go a lot quicker than if you're in initial stability. You'll feel better here's a good example, Sports Bell. You guys know Sports Bell canoes, right? They're great boats. I'm not knocking them. And you feel great when you go in them. You get in rough water. That thing's not a good boat to be in.
Right.
However, I got to say, if you can afford one, I would use a Sports Bell. There's nothing wrong with them.
Well, looking at the type of canoe, paddle-wise, and I know there's different shapes, there's different lengths, there's different shaft, bent, straight. I mean, there's just all kinds. So if somebody is getting their first boat or their first canoe, where do you start with a paddle?
Yeah, it all depends what you want to do. Like in your area, you've got bench shaft paddles. Where I am, we don't generally use bench shaft. We use what's called beaver tail, or when I'm doing solo, we do an extended otter tail. Bench shaft is a good blade if you're in a hurry. It pushes a lot more water, whereas the straight shaft isn't. It's more finesse. Mm-hmm. I know if you go to the boundary waters, there's more water than portages, so bench shaft makes more sense. In Algonquin, you're portaging more and doing small creeks, so that. But it doesn't really matter about that. I think what's really important is you know about how a blade works. If you go to an outdoor store and they have a bin of blades, so whatever it's a bench shaft or a straight shaft, and it's a wide blade and it's on sale, you got to realize that yes, that will push a lot of surface water, and that's great. If I'm doing whitewater, I'll want that blade because I want to push a lot of water really quickly to get around the rock, right? Mm-hmm. But if I'm paddling all day and I'm pushing surface water, I don't want that. I want a beaver tail, which is basically the blade is more in the water, and so that what it's doing is pushing the water under the surface and less friction on your wrists and your arms. So if you see those blades and they're on sale, that's why they're on sale.
Nobody's buying them.
Right. Yeah.
Right? They want to get rid of them because nobody's buying them, because when you use them, it's pretty tough.
Yeah.
We've talked about canoes. Have you ever made your own canoe?
I tried. Tried. The Bear Mountain Boats, actually, there's a company that actually is well known across North America for making boats. He was my neighbor, and I was in my backyard trying to fix this old Peterborough canoe, and yeah, he would do the Wilson over the fence and just shake his head. Yeah, it's still there. It's not finished yet.
Okay. Oh, it's a work in progress, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of different types of canoes, different types of paddles, obviously, I mean, I know the answer to this, but I want to get it out there. Where would one go to, see maybe the history of canoes, or see the history of different types of canoes? There is a museum, right?
Yeah, just literally 12 minutes down the road from me. So the Peterborough Canoe Museum, so that was it's about an hour and a half north of Toronto, and that is the place. It's the history of the modern day canoe, and they now got a new property, and it's going to be opened up in August, which is literally down the road from where they were, but they're going to be on the water now.
Okay.
So they have a brand new museum that's going to be opened up in mid-August. And I got to say, it's one of those things. If I lived in Niagara Falls, I probably would not promote Niagara Falls. It's like, why would you go there? Blah, blah, blah. But I got to say, I live right beside the Canoe Museum. You need to go to the Canoe Museum.
That's cool.
So, yeah, it's phenomenal. I know a lot of Americans, they do that. They actually go to the Canoe Museum, and then they go canoeing afterwards. Because you think about where I'm from, you've got the Kawartha Highlands, which is right up the road. It's a park that you can go in. But just 40 minutes from me, you've got Algonquin. Another hour, you got Killarney. Another hour and a half, you got Temagami. And we got so many places to paddle around here, and wild places, like incredible places to go. So a good holiday for you to do this year is when the museum opens up in mid-August. Go and visit the museum, or do a canoe trip and then visit the museum, and
make a trip.
Right. For everybody that's listening to the show, just check the website. They are closed now, and they're not preparing to open up to late summer, early fall of 2023. It says on their website.
Yeah, it's one of those typical things. They say it's going to be open in mid-August, and everybody's all excited about it. But yeah, check the website, because you never know when things are going to happen, right? So.
Well, speaking of the area up there where you talk about all the water and everything, and the wilderness, and I know it's near and dear to your heart, but you're heavily into like the conservation side and preserving things so people can enjoy it. Talk a little bit about that and how involved you are with that.
Yeah, well, it all started with when I started off, I thought, I'm really hyper, so I got to choose one thing. And the founder of the Canoe Museum, Kirk Whipper, years ago, and he's deceased now, whatever, but years ago, he would go to some of my shows, and he goes, Kevin, love what you're doing, but you're so hyper. You need to focus, right? Squirrel, right? And I went, well, what do I need to do? And he goes, well, choose something. But he goes, if I were you, I would choose your job is to get everybody out there. And so that's why I started writing guidebooks. To be quite honest, that's how the whole guidebook started. And I said, okay, why am I doing that? And he goes, well, if people don't go out there, they don't reconnect out there. They don't realize what we have and what we always have had. And they don't realize why it should be protected. So if they don't go out there, you just kiss it goodbye. There's no reason for them to protect it if they have no connection to it.
Right.
It's like why be in love with your wife if you don't know your wife, right?
Right.
Or your not your wife, but your partner. Doesn't matter.
Right.
But I don't know why I'm saying that. It's not on my head, but the whole thing about that is like this. So I started writing guidebooks, and then people started saying, well, that's great, but other people started cursing me. I was called a wilderness pornographer because I was going out there telling everybody about this wild area, and then everybody was going there, and they're like, well, great, Kevin, you just told everybody my secret spot. I went, there's a difference between that. I'm not going to ever tell anybody about my secret trout spot. Never would I ever tell anybody about my secret trout stream. Never. It took way too many years to find that stream, so I'm never going to tell anybody. If they're ever going to find it, they have to do the same work I did to get to it. Mm-hmm. But Algonquin Park, is that a secret? No, it's not. Is Tamagi a secret? Is Boundary Waters a secret? Is Quetico a secret? No, it's not a secret. It's on the roadmap, for heaven's sakes.
Right.
So I have rules and regulations and ethics of what I've done. So, and that's my whole thing is I wanted to get out there. And then later on, my writing became more of the etiquettes of being out there, the stories of being out there, and all that other stuff.
Yeah, that's... We run into a lot of that here, especially what we call state land. It's owned by the state of Michigan, but it's public land for everybody to use. And it's like, you're in my hunting spot, or like you said, my fishing spot. My fishing spot, go-to spots on lake. I'm not going to tell you. It's old ancient Indian.
Oh yeah, yeah. So we have Crown land. So what you guys have too, we have Crown land. And right now, during the pandemic, the parks were so busy that people want to know where Crown land was. And that's a tough one because I'm never going to just bring someone to my secret trout spot.
No.
You have to work for it to find it.
Yeah, that's what makes it so enjoyable and so rewarding is because you put the effort into finding whatever that spot is, whether it's hunting, fishing, trapping, camping, whatever. It's I understand it.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. I had a guy this spring. I was on the one dirt road I know up here, and I had my blue canoe, and I guess everybody knows my blue canoe. And I have a blue canoe because Tom Thompson said, the lake trout won't see you if you patrol over it, right?
Right.
But but he was following me on the road, and I finally stopped, and I was like, hey, can I help you? You're lost? He goes, no, just following where you're going, Kevin. I went, so you know who I am, you know where I'm going, and you're going to follow me to this spot. And it took me 7 trips to find this lake, like for over 5 years, and then you're just going to follow my truck.
It's easy that way. It's the easy button. It's the easy button, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and my answer to him, I go, well, do you want me to put the fish on your lure when you get there as well? Or what?
There you go. Yeah, yeah. I'll give you the color, the pattern, and everything.
Better yet, I'll catch them for you, and then I'll just hand them to you.
Yeah.
You can just sit in the truck. It'll be like a drive-through. I'll walk up, hand you the fish, you can just leave.
It is a fine line. I also have people that will say, well, Kevin, I want to drive 2 hours from the city. I don't want a portage. I want to catch lots of fish. I don't want to see anybody. What canoe route would you suggest? I went, well, actually, that doesn't exist. And if it did, I wouldn't tell you about it.
Right?
Exactly.
Totally get that.
Yeah.
So, but, this book is, I've started looking in more and more in this book after Mike got a hold of it and he told me about you. And people got to get this book, Another Bend in the River, by the Happy Camper's Memoirs. And literally, you'll be, what little I've started to read, I've been kind of cracking up, especially starting off with the Catholic boy and seeing where he's at today. It's awesome.
Reading through this, there's different things in here, that reminded me how I got my start in the outdoors as a youngster with my dad. Yours was fishing. Mine was hunting with my dad, and it's just there's lots of things in there that are very similar, and it's a good read. I'm telling you, if anybody is looking for something to read, whether it be on vacation at home or on a trip or what have you, even in the deer blind or at fish camp, pick it up. I'm telling you, you won't regret it.
Yep.
So.
Thanks a lot. The whole hunting thing with you, there's a shot of me with my first partridge in there, and it's such a geeky shot, right?
Yep.
But I didn't put the story in. My mom said the other day I should have. My first cottontail rabbit I shot, and I had a shotgun called the blunderbuss, and because when you shot it, the shell wouldn't eject, so I had to go put a stick down it to get the shell out. And it was on sale.
Hey, there you go.
And so I went out. My dad was all excited. I was going out for the first time to hunt a rabbit, and I shot the rabbit, and it died right beside me. I took it home, and he was helping me clean it, showed me how to clean it, and he goes, "Where'd you shoot this thing?" I went, "Well, it was pretty close, Dad. It was pretty close when I shot it." He goes, "There's no," and he goes, "You shot and missed," and he gave it a heart attack. That's how it died.
Nice. That's awesome.
That way you didn't ruin any meat, though.
Yeah, I even said that. I go, no, it's a professional shot.
That's right.
I meant that to happen.
That's right.
Right, exactly. So
maybe next time we can try that at East Lansing with the rabbit expo next door.
Don't put that in my head. That'd be hilarious.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what.
You guys get one phone call from jail.
Yeah,
so.
There you go. Yeah, we don't want to do that there. So we come to the point in the show where we've got a few questions, just fun questions we like to ask all the people who are on first time on the show. So, Danny, I'm going to let you do the honors.
All right, newbie interviewee. Obviously, you've traveled around. I think you're finishing up show season, and you do a lot of traveling. We've seen the videos on YouTube. So, as you're traveling, what are you listening to on the radio? What's your go-to listening to when traveling all over?
That's crazy, but it's either a podcast or John Denver.
Good choice, John Denver.
Right?
It's funny you mentioned that because first time I went to the Rockies, the only time I've been to the Rockies, I finally understood what he was singing about with Rocky Mountain High. It is simply incredible. It was spiritual almost. So
I grew up listening to him, and my daughter reminded me the other day. So she's 18 going on 19. She's at university, and she calls me up at midnight because I think something is wrong. I said, "Are you okay?" And she goes, "Dad, it's exam time, whatever." And I've been listening to John Denver all week. Why? I went, "Well, you high or something? What's going on?" And she goes, "Oh no, I'm not high." I went, "Okay." And I go, "Well, when you were a baby, I used to soothe you by listening to John Denver, and I think that's clicking in right now." Right?
Yeah. It's a calm, right? So
yeah.
Okay, so you're listening to John Denver. You're moving along the highway, or you're heading up, going to go canoeing somewhere. What is your go-to snack that you have in the vehicle?
Oh, grilled cheese sandwich.
I like it.
Like cold, like just in a paper bag. That's kind of weird. Yeah, but you know why my dad always had a cheese sandwich? Because you're never going to get food poisoning if you have that, Kevin.
True.
There you go. See, look at that. Smart man.
Interesting.
Worst thing ever is to get food poisoning when you're on a road trip and you're doing presentations on the stage. You don't want to throw up or poop.
No,
you don't.
Not good.
All right, so Mike and Dan have made the trip up to your home there, and you're going to cook us a meal that you said you guys have got to have this. Now, it can't be trout, because I know that's in the book, so we're not going to let you use that recipe. But what would be the go-to meal that you would cook Mike and Dan when we were at your place?
I would get a lake trout and then get walleye fillets, put it inside the lake trout, put onion, lemon, garlic, and then sew up the lake trout. And then in the backyard, I'd bake it, and that's what we'd have.
Man, you know, we got to get a new question, because every time we ask this question, I wind up hungry.
I know, right?
And then I go through the kitchen and try to find something after the show.
Okay, got 2 more questions left. I'm throwing this one in because we've discussed it. We're gonna sit around the campfire. We're gonna have a beverage.
I was gonna ask that question, man. That's weird. Oh,
right.
Great minds think alike.
All right, give me your best whiskey that you would say this is the one.
That's a tough one, because I actually collect whiskey, but Balvenie 12-year-old wood. And why is because I had an amazing job. I got paid for this. I went down to River Spey in Scotland with amazing paddlers, world-renowned paddlers, and we stopped at distilleries along the way and did a taste testing. And of all the distilleries who I got to know, not only did I like their whiskey, but they were very ethical people, the Balvenie. And because it's true Scottish whiskey, because there's a lot of things going on with the whole distilleries now, and they're keeping to the roots, right? So that's pretty good. And I got to say, I'm going to tell you guys this story because I think a lot of your listeners would love this story. So when I finished that trip, that company came into our campsite for the last night, and they did a big whiskey demo from moonshine to actually one whiskey that was 29 years old. It was amazing. So they gave me a bottle of whiskey of their 29-year-old recipe. It was a $1,000 bottle. They actually gave it to me. They actually liked me. Kevin, we like you. Here's the bottle. I got home. Could you guys imagine? Okay, well, imagine bringing home a $1,000 bottle of bourbon, right? And then your friends find out, right? Your friends find out. So they all come over. So my neighbor Tim lives right beside me. Great guy, great neighbor. He's just one of those guys. He looks like the Trailer Park Boys, with the whiskey and Coke, right? And so he comes over and he goes, "What's going on, guys? What's going on?" And my buddies tell him what's going on. I went, "Don't tell him what we're doing. It's a $1,000 bottle of whiskey." And so I start serving everybody, and I don't believe I've been telling this story because it was always a secret for years. But what happened was I went to go and make him a drink, but I got I think it was Grant's. It was one of the cheapest blended scotches you could ever get, right? And I poured it and I gave it to him. To this day, he tells everybody, "I remember when I was at Kevin's and we had that really fancy scotch." No, I did, but you didn't.
Oh my gosh! Oh,
that was
evil. It was terrible. I thought about it now.
That's priceless.
Absolutely. And the last question is, that was a great story, but you're going to tell us a story around the campfire that you're going to say it comes to your mind that it hits you for whatever reason, and it's the story you're going to go to and tell Mike and Dan because it moves you so much.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there's so many. But the one I would say is my daughter. She was 8 years old at the time. We're doing a canoe trip across Algonquin for 12 days, right? And it was day 7, and we're on the Portage. She had a T-shirt on, tie-dye T-shirt, blue jeans, shorts, whatever. And we meet these guys, and this is where I talk about bushcraft. Like I think bushcraft is phenomenal. But there was these guys that I would say fake bushcraft. They had full military fatigues on, but they weren't military. They had big Bowie knives down to their knees, right? And they meet her on the Portage, and they're like, "How long are you out for, little girl?" And she goes, I don't know what day it is. Like, how long are you out for?" "We're going out, and we're going to survive for 2 nights in Algonquin Park." And she had already been out whatever days, and she didn't know what day it was, and she was 8 years old, and she goes, "Guys, I suggest you get out longer."
There you go. See? That's awesome. And you know what? I know, well, Mike and I know these types that they need to be in full outdoor gear because they're going to be outdoors and they're going to take on the world. And sometimes we see that and we're just at the sporting goods store.
Yeah, or you're at an archery shoot and everybody's in full camo. And it's like, well, I just don't understand. They got to act the part, I guess. I don't know.
Right? So, but yeah, those are the questions we like to ask our interviewees, and the great answers. I like the cheese sandwich.
Yeah. Well, I got one last question, and then we'll wrap up the show.
All right.
A body of water you have not yet been on that you want to put a boat in.
Yeah, I'm thinking that now because I'm going to be 60 this fall. So my buddy and I were going to turn 60, and we're like, where do we go? And we have this hit list, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the one, I've been to the top of it, but not the whole thing. I want to circumnavigate Lake Nipigon in a canoe or a kayak. And I've been to the top because I went down the Kopka River from Wapakimi, and we got to the north shore of Lake Nipigon, and we spent there for a few days. But I saw this mini Great Lake, inland Great Lake, and it was phenomenal. Like I just want to go back, and it was just pelicans and bald eagles and nobody else. It's just rough water and really high cliffs all the way around. It would take about 10 days to circumnavigate it, but man, that's on my hit list. Yeah.
It's true wilderness.
Yeah, it really is, and very skill set. You can't mess up out there. So
it's Canada, United States, especially here around Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, up in the New York and that area. There's just so many great lakes. I mean, we're so blessed to have so much fresh water to go play in. It's amazing.
Yeah, we really. The one place I like to do in your area, the Green River. It's called the Green River, right?
Green River in Michigan?
No, not Michigan. I've paddled a lot in Michigan. Osable River.
Yes,
I've done that many times actually.
The Holy Waters. That by far the South Branch of the Osable is my favorite place to put a kayak in.
Yeah, I love that. I've for many years I've done that when I've visited. But the Green River in the western U.S. I don't know much about it. Cliff Jacobson's always told me about it, saying I should go.
By Salt Lake City, Utah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And also the one that goes into the Mexican border too. He kept I forget the name of the river, but it's the Big Canyon.
Grand Canyon?
Not the Grand Canyon, but one of those around there.
Okay.
Oh shoot! Now you guys have to school me because I can't remember all these places that what you have.
Is it on the border river, the Rio Grande?
Yeah, Rio Grande. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So he says it's not as dangerous as everybody says.
Stay on the U.S. side.
Yeah, it's true. The one thing I would always like to do with Cliff Jacobson is, and I got to make sure it happens, is that we've never canoed together. We've always done shows together and conversed and debated, whatever. But I would love to go down Basswood Lake in the Boundary Waters with him in a canoe and have the American flag on one side of the canoe embedded and the Canadian embedded on the other side. And then him and I paddling down the lake, and then at the Portage, there's a campsite there with the border marker that Arnold Leopold actually camped at. And I want to sit there with camp chairs and a campfire and debate back and forth.
There you go. Cool. That would be awesome.
That would be awesome.
It's just something so simple. I'm telling you, if anybody's listening to this show right now and you've not experienced being on the water in a canoe or a kayak, you got to do it. You got to do it. It's so invigorating. It's like I said earlier. It recharges your soul.
Right.
It's I don't know. I can't get enough of it. I really can't. So, but
it is a simplistic lifestyle. You go from A to B with all your belongings in a vessel.
Yeah.
And that's why we like it. It's just very simple.
Yeah. You leave everything behind.
Yeah, and what we said at the very beginning, you are who you are out there. There's no facade about your character.
Absolutely. Well, Kevin, I really appreciate you taking some of your time out tonight to be able to sit and talk with us. And like we talked about the book, make sure Another Bend in the River, get out and get this, and take a look at some of his other bodies of work as well. Anything else, Dan?
Nope. I think we've covered it from stem to stern.
There you go. I like it. All right. I tell you what, everybody, if you're listening to the podcast on iTunes, make sure you go over and give us a review. That helps people who support us. If those of you who are watching the live stream here, go over to Kevin's social media sites, give him a like, follow, share, and subscribe to his YouTube pages. And do the same for us if you would as well. And share the show. It helps the people who in turn support us. Next week, do we have anything lined up?
We just got to get a confirmation, but the Flying Angler.
The Flying Angler, there you go. Interesting story, very beneficial to the ice fishermen here in Saginaw Bay.
For sure,
especially the last couple of years. So if we can get him on next week, that's who's going to be our guest. So make sure you tune in next Wednesday night, 7:30, right here on Facebook. And hopefully we will have that confirmation, and we will have the flying angler on. Kevin, thanks once again, and that'll do it for us this week, folks. Y'all take care, and we'll see you again next week.
This episode was brought to you by PSE Archery,
Deer Camp Coffee,
Buck Baits,
JPO Game Calls,
The Island Armory,
Hacker Max,
Sunrise Archery,
and C3 Better the Hunt Technology.
Thanks for listening, and join us again here next week. Until then, remember, as we always like to say, if you're out on the water or in the woods, shoot straight and be safe until next week on the Up North Journal.